Can you imagine what your life would be like if you were living in a college party house while suffering from delusions and hallucinations that seemingly came out of nowhere? What's up, everyone? My name is Tyler Adolfo, and this is an experience that happened to me. It's something that caught me off guard. It's not something I anticipated. It's not something that I saw coming. The truth of the matter is, my junior year of university started off rather strong. I had a great job going into the year with the Chamber of Commerce. I held multiple positions of leadership within my college fraternity, and I was on the path to continuing my academic success from previous semesters. I had momentum, I was building upon it, and things went well for the first month or so of the school year. In this video, I'm going to briefly talk about the 6 month long manic episode I suffered that junior year, and then I'm going to share 3 ways my perspective has changed. More specifically, 3 new ways that I see the world as a result of that manic episode. Because as you can imagine, losing control of your sanity, losing control of your central command center, it can totally shift your perspective. It can totally transform the way that you see the world. That's exactly what happened with me. Going into the school year, things were rather well. But at various points in the semester, I would go these extended periods of time without sleep. I was assiduously committed to taking on different projects within my role as social media manager for my fraternity. And one of those projects actually got in the New York Times. I organized a sexual assault awareness campaign slash fundraiser to raise funds for organizations that help victims of sexual assault. It got the attention of a New York Times reporter. I interviewed with that reporter, and I had a few paragraphs from that interview extracted and placed in a New York Times article. The larger context of the article was about protests against Greek life, and I was giving a Greek life perspective. I was awake for 5 days straight at one point, organizing and carrying out that sexual assault awareness campaign that got me in the New York Times. I do believe that going those 5 days without sleep was a major trigger, if not the primary reason for me going into mania in the first place. It wasn't long before I started having false beliefs and perceptions, before I started rapidly talking like a delusional auctioneer. I had feelings of grandiosity, feelings of invincibility. My thoughts were racing. And I was put in the psych ward rather early on in that semester, but it only exacerbated my symptoms. I was released without being put on any medication and without any follow-up plan to see a doctor to monitor my health. I was in no condition to be released back in the community, but sure enough, that's exactly what they did. There were lots of consequences as a result of this mania. I ended up destroying friendships because of the times that I lashed out at them and made accusatory remarks towards them, whether it be my friends, my family, my fraternity brothers. Towards the tail end of the episode, I ended up getting expelled by my university. I ended up losing actually multiple jobs. I lost my job with the Chamber of Commerce. I ended up getting another job while manic with Papagino's, and I quickly lost that job as well because of my mania and the behavior that I exhibited. It was very unbecoming of someone in the customer service industry. I was acting in ways that were out of character. And so I had all these consequences: loss of friendships, loss of income, loss of my education. It cost me tremendous. It cost me in tremendous ways. It cost me in ways that were detrimental to my overall well-being when coming out of mania. So I had this 6 month period, and that's the key takeaway, where I didn't have control of my brain. I was acting insane, and that's one thing I'll forever be grateful for, is having my sanity again. It's something I'll never take for granted again. One of my biggest takeaways from this, and these aren't listed in particular order of like greater significance or one's more true than the other, but one of my major takeaways is that my mind is capable of lying to me. During Mania, my mind told me that some of my fraternity brothers were Nazi agents. During Mania, my mind had me doing hallucination phone calls with people that did not exist. During Mania, my mind had me feeling like I was the Messiah, so much so that at one point I went to a Catholic church reactory and signed myself in as Jesus and left a note that said, "I'm back." This distorted thinking, as I mentioned, had lots of negative impacts. And so I think that's the first key takeaway for at least myself. And maybe some others can relate to this too, people who've gone through mania. But recognizing that your brain is capable of lying to you, especially when sick. The second key takeaway is that sleep is not optional. I went 5 days in a row without sleep at one point, and to this day I believe that it was the primary trigger, the predominant reason for me going into mania in the first place. And that was, of course, because of my commitment towards the New York Times. Well, I didn't know it was going to be in the New York Times, but my commitment towards carrying out this project successfully and making sure that it went smoothly. It was important to me as a survivor of SA myself. And so realizing that sleep is kind of serving as a powerful guardrail against going into mania in the future. Sleep is a fantastic form of medicine, whether you have a mental illness or not. But I think it's especially paramount that we're getting solid amounts of sleep when we have severe mental illnesses, particularly those like bipolar disorder, which affects only about 2.8% of the population. The third and final takeaway that I have from this is that silence can be a form of wisdom. Sometimes less is more. During mania, everything was loud. The environment that I was in, living inside a college fraternity house, was extremely loud at all times. And I feel like it was juxtaposed to the loud mind that I had at the time. It was juxtaposed to the racing thoughts that I experienced at the time. And when I came out of mania, I still had those racing thoughts, but they were now about embarrassment, shame, and guilt about the things I had said and done. And now I was fixated on this idea of trying to find some peace and tranquility in my life once again. And that's where I found the power of silence. And that's why I say silence is a type of wisdom. It allows you to stop, set boundaries. It allows you to stop and reflect. It allows you to stop and see the big picture. It's not always good to rush into things. It's not always advantageous to act impulsively. Taking risks in life can turn out for yourself in a positive way, but that's not always the case. I think it's important to find balance in our lives, and silence is integral in order to accomplish that task. So those were my 3 takeaways in this video for how my 6-month-long Manic episode changed the way I see the world. These 3 takeaways are now defining every day that I live. I think about these things a lot, and they're not the only things I think about, but they are the main ones. I hope that you found this video insightful or interesting. If you want to learn more about my 6-month-long Manic episode, I have a playlist on my channel called Bipolar Breakdown. I talk about mania, I talk about depression, I talk about my hospitalizations, I talk about my recovery. And many people have found it inspirational and helpful in terms of making them feel less alone in their own respective journeys. So I hope you'll check out that playlist if you're new here. If you're new here, please hit that subscribe button if you enjoyed this video. And regardless if you're new or returning, please hit that like button so more people can see this video. With that being said, love, light, and tranquility to all.